The moment my hand connected with Victoria Hartwell's face, time stopped. The sound echoed through the marble foyer of the $15 million mansion like a gunshot. Mrs. Hartwell stumbled backward, her hand flying to her cheek, her eyes wide with shock. Behind her, the entire household staff froze. Benjamin, the butler, Rosa, the cook, Marcus, the driver, all of them watching in horror as I, Jasmine Brooks, the lowest-ranking maid in the household, had just done the unthinkable. I had slapped the billionaire's wife. In that moment of absolute silence, I knew my life was over. But what I didn't know was that this single act of desperate courage would crack open the cold, perfect facade of the Hartwell family and force everyone inside to finally face the truth they'd been hiding for years. My name is Jasmine Brooks, and I'm 34 years old. I've worked as a maid for the Hartwell family for 18 months, cleaning their massive estate, washing their expensive clothes, and staying invisible the way good help is supposed to. I took this job because I was desperate. My 6-year-old daughter, Emma, has leukemia, and even with insurance, the medical bills were drowning me. The Hartwell family paid well, better than anywhere else I'd worked, and the health benefits covered Emma's treatments. This job wasn't just employment, it was my daughter's lifeline. The Hartwell family consisted of 3 people living in a house big enough for 30. Christopher Hartwell, 52, had built his billions in tech, creating software that revolutionized data security. He was quiet, always working, barely present even when he was home. His wife, Victoria, 45, was beautiful, polished, and cruel in ways that left no visible marks. And their daughter, Rachel, 17, was a ghost in her own home, thin, sad, invisible to parents who barely acknowledged her existence. From my first week working there, I noticed the dysfunction. Christopher would come home from work and go straight to his office, not emerging until after everyone was asleep. Victoria would spend her days shopping, getting beauty treatments, attending charity events where she smiled for cameras, then come home and tear into the staff for imagined infractions. And Rachel would sit at the dinner table, trying to tell her parents about school, about her life, only to be met with distracted nods or complete silence. But I kept my head down and my mouth shut. That's what you do when you're the help. You see everything, you say nothing, and you definitely don't interfere in family matters. I cleaned, I worked, I collected my paycheck, and I went home to Emma every night. Victoria Hartwell was the kind of employer who treated staff like furniture, useful when needed, invisible the rest of the time. She'd leave messes deliberately to test us, would check our work with white gloves literally looking for dust, and would dock our pay for violations of rules she made up on the spot. "This bathroom is unacceptable," she'd say, running her finger along a spotless counter. "I expect better. I'll be noting this in your file." There was no file. There was just her need to assert power over people who couldn't fight back. Benjamin, the butler who'd worked for the family for 12 years, taught me how to survive Victoria. "Don't react," he'd say quietly. "She's looking for a response. Don't give her one. Say, 'Yes, Mrs. Hartwell,' and move on." So that's what I did. For 18 months, I was invisible, silent, obedient. I let Victoria's cruelty roll off me because I needed this job. Emma needed this job. But there's a limit to how much cruelty any person can witness before something breaks. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in October. I was cleaning the main hallway when I heard shouting from the formal living room, unusual in a house where emotions were usually locked behind closed doors. "I don't care what your father thinks." Victoria's voice rang out. "You're not going to that school. It's too far away, too expensive, and frankly, you're not smart enough to succeed there anyway." I froze with my cleaning supplies, recognizing that she was talking to Rachel. I should have left, should have gone to another part of the house. But something kept me there, listening. "Mom, I got accepted." Rachel's voice was pleading, desperate. "It's my dream school." "Dad, said he'd support whatever I wanted. Your father says a lot of things he doesn't mean. Victoria cut her off. He's too busy to actually parent, so that job falls to me. And I'm telling you, you're staying here, going to community college, and that's final. But why? Rachel was crying now. Why can't I just? Because you'll fail. Victoria shouted. You'll embarrass this family by dropping out or flunking out. You're not exceptional, Rachel. You're average at best. It's better to accept that now than to humiliate yourself trying to be something you're not. The silence that followed was worse than the shouting. Then I heard Rachel's footsteps running from the room, heading toward the stairs. She passed me without seeing me, tears streaming down her face, her whole body shaking with sobs. I stood there, shaking with rage, wanting to go after Rachel, wanting to confront Victoria. But I didn't. I went back to cleaning, swallowing my anger, doing my job. That night, Benjamin found me in the kitchen after everyone had gone to bed, scrubbing counters that were already clean, working off my frustration. You heard, Benjamin said quietly. It wasn't a question. How does she talk to her own daughter like that? I asked, my voice breaking. That girl is brilliant and kind, and her mother treats her like she's worthless. Benjamin sighed, sitting down heavily. It's been like this for years. Gets worse every year. Mr. Hartwell knows, but he doesn't intervene. Says he can't control his wife, that she's always been complicated. Rachel suffers. Mrs. Hartwell gets crueler, and Mr. Hartwell hides in his work. Someone should say something, I said. Someone should make them see what they're doing to that girl. Jasmine, Benjamin looked at me seriously. That someone can't be you. Or me. We're the help. We don't interfere. You need this job. Remember that. He was right. I needed this job. So I swallowed my rage and kept silent. The pattern continued for the next 3 weeks. Victoria's cruelty toward Rachel escalated, criticizing her appearance, her grades, her friends, her choices. Rachel withdrew further, barely eating, barely speaking. Christopher remained oblivious, working 16-hour days, treating his home like a hotel where he slept occasionally. I watched Rachel disappearing, and I saw my own daughter's face. If Emma survived her leukemia, if she grew up and someone treated her the way Victoria treated Rachel, wouldn't I want someone to intervene? Wouldn't I want someone to be brave enough to say something? But I stayed silent because I needed the job, because my daughter's medical bills were stacking up, because speaking up wasn't worth losing everything. Then came the dinner party. Victoria was hosting a charity fundraiser at the house. 50 wealthy guests, catered food, live music, and the entire staff working overtime to make everything perfect. I was serving drinks, staying invisible as usual when I heard Victoria's voice carrying across the room. She was talking to a group of her wealthy friends, and they were discussing children and schools. Rachel, Victoria laughed, and the sound was like glass breaking. Oh, she's going to community college. We're being realistic about her capabilities. Not every child can be exceptional. Some are just ordinary. The women around her made sympathetic noises, and Victoria continued, I love her, of course, but I refuse to waste money on expensive schools for a child who lacks the intelligence and drive to succeed. That's just enabling mediocrity. I looked across the room and saw Rachel standing in the doorway. She'd heard everything. Her face was pale, her eyes devastated. She turned and ran. Without thinking, I put down my tray and followed her. I found Rachel in her bathroom, sitting on the floor, a bottle of her mother's sleeping pills in her hand. Rachel, I said quietly, my heart pounding, put those down. She looked up at me with empty eyes. Why? So I can keep listening to my mother tell everyone how worthless I am? So I can keep living in this house where nobody sees me? I sat down on the floor next to her. Your mother is wrong about everything. You're brilliant and kind, and you deserve so much better than this. Then why doesn't anyone stop her? Rachel's voice broke. Why doesn't my dad say something? Why doesn't anyone tell her she can't treat people like this? Because they're scared. I admitted. Or they've given up. Or they don't know how to fight someone like your mother. I can't keep doing this, Rachel whispered. I can't keep pretending everything is fine when I'm drowning. I took the pill bottle from her hand. You're not going to do anything permanent because of temporary pain. Your mother is wrong about you, but you need to believe that yourself. How? Rachel asked. How do I believe I'm worth something when my own mother thinks I'm worthless? That's when something inside me snapped. I'd been silent for 18 months. I'd watched this family destroy each other with their dysfunction and cruelty. I'd told myself it wasn't my place to intervene, that I needed this job too much to risk speaking up. But looking at Rachel, this brilliant 17-year-old girl contemplating ending her life because her mother had spent years tearing her down, I realized that some things mattered more than a paycheck. Some things were worth risking everything for. Come with me, I told Rachel. I took her hand and led her downstairs. The party was still going strong. Victoria holding court with her wealthy friends. Christopher nowhere to be seen. I walked Rachel right into the middle of that elegant gathering, still in my maid's uniform, completely out of place among the designer gowns and expensive suits. Mrs. Hartwell, I said, my voice carrying across the room. We need to talk. Victoria turned, her expression shifting from surprise to cold fury. Jasmine, this is highly inappropriate. Get back to work. No, I said, and the single word felt like stepping off a cliff. Your daughter is upstairs contemplating suicide because you've spent years telling her she's worthless. Someone needs to tell you that's not acceptable. The room went silent. 50 wealthy guests stared at me, the maid who dared to speak up. Victoria's face flushed red. How dare you speak to me like this in my own home, in front of my guests? How dare you treat your daughter like she's garbage? I interrupted, my voice rising. She's 17 years old, and she wanted to die tonight because her own mother called her mediocre and stupid in front of a room full of people. That is not what Victoria started. That's exactly what you said. I cut her off. I heard you. Rachel heard you. You humiliated your daughter publicly because it made you feel superior. And you've been doing it for years while your husband hides in his office, and everyone else stays silent because you're rich and powerful and cruel. You're fired, Victoria said coldly. Get out of my house. Fine, I said. I'll leave. But before I go, I'm going to say what everyone in this house has been too scared to say. You're a terrible mother. You're destroying your daughter. And if she ends up broken beyond repair, that's on you. That's when Victoria stepped forward and grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. You have no right to judge me. You're the help. You don't know anything about our family. I know enough, I said, pulling my arm free. I know Rachel is brilliant and talented and kind. I know she got accepted to her dream school because she worked hard and earned it. I know she's desperate for her mother to see her, to value her, to love her for who she is instead of criticizing her for who she isn't. And I know that you're too wrapped up in your own bitterness and cruelty to see what an incredible person your daughter is. Victoria raised her hand like she was going to slap me. And that's when I did it. I slapped her first. My hand connected with her perfectly made-up cheek, and the sound echoed through the silent room. Victoria stumbled backward, shocked, her hand flying to her face. Every guest gasped. The string quartet stopped playing. Time seemed to freeze. Someone had to stop you, I said into the silence. Someone had to wake you up before you destroy your daughter completely. I turned and walked out of that room, through the marble foyer, out the front door of that mansion. Behind me, I heard chaos erupting, guests murmuring, Victoria shouting, someone calling for security. I sat in my car in the driveway, shaking, realizing what I'd done. I'd just slapped a billionaire's wife in front of 50 witnesses. I'd lost my job, probably destroyed any chance of getting another one, and put Emma's medical coverage at risk. All because I couldn't stay silent anymore. I expected security to come drag me off the property. Instead, 15 minutes later, Christopher Hartwell opened my car door. "Come back inside," he said quietly. "Please." "I'm fired," I said. "Your wife was pretty clear about that." "My wife doesn't make those decisions alone," Christopher said. "Come inside. We need to talk." I followed him back into the house, expecting police, lawyers, disaster. Instead, I found the party over, guests cleared out, and the family, Christopher, Victoria, and Rachel, sitting in the formal living room. Benjamin and the other staff members hovered uncertainly in the doorway. "Sit down, Jasmine," Christopher said, gesturing to a chair. I sat, my heart pounding, waiting for the consequences of my actions. Christopher looked at his wife, his daughter, then at me. "My daughter just told me she's been suicidal. She told me what her mother said about her tonight. And she told me that you're the only person in this house who's ever stood up for her." Victoria's face was still red where I'd slapped her, her expression a mixture of fury and something that might have been shame. "What you did was assault," Christopher continued. "Victoria has every right to press charges." "I know," I said quietly. "I don't regret it." "You should," Victoria said coldly. "You had no right." "I had every right," I interrupted. "Your daughter wanted to die tonight. If I'd stayed silent, if I'd kept being the good, invisible maid who sees everything and says nothing, Rachel might not be here right now. So yes, I slapped you. And I do it again." Rachel was crying silently, her father's arm around her shoulders. Christopher looked at his wife with an expression I'd never seen before. Anger, yes, but also disappointment, and something that looked like awakening. "Victoria, is what Jasmine said true?" Christopher asked. "Have you been treating Rachel this way?" "I've been trying to prepare her for reality," Victoria said defensively, "to help her understand her limitations." "She doesn't have limitations." I burst out. "She's brilliant. She got into one of the best schools in the country on her own merit. You're the one with limitations. You're so bitter and unhappy that you can't stand to see your daughter succeed." Victoria stood up abruptly. "I don't have to listen to this from the maid." "Then listen to it from me," Christopher said quietly, and something in his tone made Victoria freeze. "Jasmine is right. You've been cruel to our daughter. I've seen it, I've ignored it, and that makes me complicit. But it stops now." "Christopher," Victoria started. "No," Christopher cut her off. "I've been hiding in my office for years, avoiding conflict, letting you run this household however you wanted. I told myself you were just being protective, just trying to help Rachel be realistic. But the truth is, you've been tearing her down. And I let it happen because addressing it was uncomfortable." He turned to Rachel. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You deserve better from both of us." Rachel was sobbing now, and Christopher pulled her close. Victoria stood apart from them, her arms crossed, her expression defensive, but also, for the first time since I'd met her, uncertain. Benjamin cleared his throat from the doorway. "If I may speak, sir?" Christopher nodded, and Benjamin stepped forward. "I've worked for this family for 12 years. I've watched Miss Rachel grow up. I've also watched Mrs. Hartwell's treatment of her get progressively worse. Jasmine did what many of us wanted to do, but couldn't. She spoke the truth that needed to be spoken." "Then you're all disloyal," Victoria said, her voice shaking. "No," Benjamin said gently. We're loyal to this family. Sometimes loyalty means telling hard truths, not just enabling dysfunction. Christopher looked at me. Jasmine, I'm not going to fire you. In fact, I'm going to double your salary and make sure Emma's medical coverage is never in question. What you did tonight was brave and necessary. You probably saved my daughter's life. I don't need a reward for basic human decency, I said. I just want Rachel to be okay. She will be, Christopher said, looking at his wife. We're going to get family therapy. All of us. This dysfunction ends now. Victoria's carefully constructed facade was cracking. You're all against me, she said, her voice breaking. My own family turning on me because the maid had a tantrum. Mom, Rachel's voice was quiet but clear. Jasmine didn't have a tantrum. She told you the truth. You've been hurting me for years, and you either didn't notice or didn't care. Tonight I wanted to die because I believed what you've been telling me, that I'm worthless, mediocre, a disappointment. Jasmine showed me that's not true. Victoria sank back into her chair, and for the first time, I saw her as she really was, not a cruel villain, but a deeply unhappy woman taking out her own pain on the people around her. I don't know how to do this, Victoria said quietly. I don't know how to be the mother she needs. Then learn, Christopher said. We'll all learn together, starting with therapy tomorrow. I stood up to leave, feeling the adrenaline finally wearing off, exhaustion taking its place. I should go home to Emma. Jasmine, Rachel said, standing up and crossing to me. Thank you for seeing me, for speaking up, for caring enough to risk everything. I hugged this girl I'd watched suffer in silence, this brilliant young woman who'd been taught to believe she was worthless. The next few weeks were strange and difficult. The Hartwell family started therapy, individually and together. Victoria was resistant at first, defensive, but slowly something began to shift. She started acknowledging her cruelty, began to understand that her own unhappiness didn't justify hurting her daughter. Christopher came home earlier, actually present instead of hiding. He had dinner with his family, asked Rachel about her day, listened to her answers. And Rachel began to emerge from her shell, smiling more, talking more, daring to take up space in her own home. I continued working there, but the dynamic had changed. I wasn't invisible anymore. The family actually saw me, respected me, valued my opinion. One evening, about 2 months after that terrible dinner party, Victoria asked to speak with me privately. We sat in the garden, and she looked at me for a long moment before speaking. I need to apologize to you, Victoria said, for how I treated you, for how I treated everyone. I've been so angry for so long, and I took it out on the people who couldn't fight back. Why were you so angry? I asked. Victoria was quiet for a long time. I gave up my career when I married Christopher. I was a lawyer, successful in my own right. But Christopher's career took off, and someone needed to stay home with Rachel, and it was assumed that someone was me. I resented it. I resented Rachel for being the reason I gave up my dreams. I resented Christopher for not seeing my sacrifice, so I became cruel. That doesn't justify how you treated your daughter, I said. No, Victoria agreed. It doesn't, but it explains it. I was so focused on what I'd lost that I couldn't see what I had, a brilliant daughter who needed a mother, not a critic, a husband who wanted to connect, but didn't know how, a life that could have been fulfilling if I'd been present for it, instead of bitter about it. What are you going to do now? I asked. I'm going back to law school, Victoria said. Part-time at first. I'm going to reclaim the part of myself I gave up, but without punishing everyone else for my choices. And I'm going to learn how to be the mother Rachel deserves, even if it takes the rest of my life. 3 months after I slapped Victoria Hartwell, Rachel got accepted to her dream school. The family gathered to celebrate, actually celebrating together. with genuine joy and connection. Christopher hugged his daughter and told her how proud he was. Victoria cried and apologized for almost preventing this moment from happening. And Rachel looked at her parents with hope in her eyes, hope that they might actually become the family she'd always needed them to be. "Jasmine," Rachel said, pulling me into their family hug, "you're part of this celebration too. None of this would have happened if you hadn't been brave enough to speak up." Today, I still work for the Hartwell family, but everything is different now. Victoria treats the staff with respect. Christopher is present in his daughter's life. Rachel is thriving at her university, calling home to share her successes with parents who actually listen. And I learned that sometimes being brave means risking everything: your job, your security, your safety, because some things matter more than self-preservation. Some things are worth fighting for, even when you're powerless. The night I slapped Victoria Hartwell, I thought I destroyed my life. Instead, I'd cracked open a dysfunctional family's facade and forced them to confront the truth they'd been hiding from for years. I'd given Rachel permission to believe she was valuable. I'd shown Christopher that silence is complicity, and I'd challenged Victoria to face her own pain instead of inflicting it on everyone around her. It wasn't my place to intervene. I was just the maid, the help, the invisible person cleaning up other people's messes. But sometimes the people with the least power are the only ones brave enough to tell the truth because they have less to lose, or because they care more about what's right than what's safe. That slap echoed through the mansion and shocked everyone who witnessed it. But what shocked them more was what came after. A family finally forced to face their dysfunction, a daughter saved from despair, and the understanding that sometimes love means being brave enough to intervene, even when silence would be easier. I slapped a billionaire's wife. It was assault. It was inappropriate. It violated every rule about knowing your place. But it also saved a girl's life and woke up a family that was sleepwalking toward disaster. And if I had to do it again, knowing all the risks and consequences, I wouldn't change a single thing.